I'm with Dana Hart, who is president of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Dana, tell us about the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame.
Sure. The Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, located here in downtown Knoxville, our mission statement is to honor the past, celebrate the present, and promote the future of basketball. We are an international Hall of Fame, and that includes everything from youth basketball all the way up to professional and Olympic level.
Can you tell us how this came about? What was the idea and how did it actually come to fruition?
The Hall of Fame was originally supposed to be in Jackson, Tennessee, and it was because the NAIA tournaments, which were the predecessor to the NCAA Final Four for women, were held in Jackson. So Jackson tried for many years to raise the funding to build the Hall of Fame there. They were not able to do it, and so two influential women, Coach Pat Summitt, a dear friend of ours, inductee and founding board member, and Gloria Ray, who at that time was the president of Knoxville Tourism and Sports Corporation, said, let's bring it to Knoxville.
It's going to be a huge statement for women's basketball as well as for the Knoxville community.
They worked with corporate sponsors, with the local community, and with the government to bring the Hall of Fame here to Knoxville, and they opened in 1999.
What's your favorite exhibit here at the Hall of Fame?
Wow, my favorite exhibit, probably the rule book, the Spalding rule book that was written and edited by Senda Berenson, the mother of women's basketball. There are 3 copies of it in existence.
This is the book.
That is the book. It looks a little tattered, but it's in great shape. It was published in 1901 by Senda Berenson, and Senda was a physical education teacher at Smith College. So she found something out about the men's basketball game and kind of tweaked it for the women's game. The book, it states that it is basketball for women, and basket and ball are 2 words. And at the time, the men were not allowed in the gymnasium. So the gymnasium was closed off to any men because it was not appropriate to see women doing physical activity like that.
How has the game evolved? If you were watching a women's basketball game in 1901 compared to 2021, I'm sure that they were quite a bit different.
Absolutely. So the game in 1901, it was a non-dribbling game. It was a passing-only game. You played for so many minutes, then you had to rest because of the fragility of women at that time, supposedly.
Right.
So that has changed a lot, 3 parts of the court. At one point, coaches were not allowed to coach except at halftime. So there's a lot of changes that have happened within the game. And it's not just how the game has changed. Roles for women have changed along with basketball. I like to think that basketball might have been a conduit for that, to let women know that they can lead, that they can participate in things. And to see the game progress from 1892 to where it is today is huge.
You mentioned great ambassadors for women's basketball, and we certainly can't forget about Pat Summitt.
When I put you in, what did I tell you to do? Then do it.
Can you talk about her influence on sports and really on East Tennessee and our entire country?
We are very blessed that the Hall of Fame is in Knoxville, and this is where Pat was. That is not by accident. Pat is a founding member of the Hall of Fame. She was very instrumental in getting the Hall of Fame here. Pat was, as we know, an outstanding coach, the best of the best. She also was an outstanding player, and she played different sports besides just basketball. So if you come to the Hall of Fame and you're saying, what is one thing that I need to make sure that I see? One is the letter that offered Pat Summitt the coaching position at the University of Tennessee. It is done on a typewriter. What she did at a time that other coaches were not doing. A lot of people don't know, but she drove the bus, she washed the clothes. She was within a year or 2 difference in age from her players. She was very young.
I've been very fortunate, I think, to be involved with a group of girls that have a great attitude, that they don't mind paying a price.
What Pat did for the players, what she instilled in them, the level of commitment from them. Every single player that ever played for her graduated from the University of Tennessee, which is incredible. So when you look at Pat's definite dozen that will make you successful, hands down, Pat Summitt did something for our sport in the history of women's basketball that can never be replicated.
I put you 3 inside, bottom movement, and get on the offensive board. Now let's go. 1, 2, 3. Go.
But I think with the Hall of Fame, it goes beyond just Pat as the coach and the player. it is Pat the person, because as you walk through the Hall of Fame and as you talk to different inductees throughout the year, the impact that she had on them, the standard of excellence that she set forth for everyone was a high bar, and nobody wanted to disappoint Pat Summitt. So I think Pat's impact is great from the basketball standpoint, but the legacy she has left behind is bigger than I think she would have even imagined.
For Women's History Month, what else are you all doing to promote not only women's basketball, but we've seen, as you mentioned, a changing role for women in society, and I think that sports have played a role in that.
Stepping back a few months, we did a traveling exhibit for the women's suffrage movement, and that told the story of women getting the right to vote, but we also paired that with basketball. What was going on with the women's suffrage movement at the time, and what is going on with women's basketball at the same time frame. So we are getting ready to put that back up. On our social media, a piece on an inductee every day with a tidbit about what they brought to the history of the game. If someone comes through the Hall of Fame and they say, okay, what's a little bit different that I may not know that I might miss? Let's talk about sports marketing.
Some fancy balls spinning.
We had a couple of groups that were the epitome of sports marketing back in the day, and one of those is the All-American Redheads. They were a traveling team that played from 1936 to 1986, sponsored by a hair salon. If you didn't have red hair, you dyed your hair red. It made women want to have red hair. They played against men's teams. They traveled in the ultra-long limousine that we have here at the Hall of Fame. And they played show-type basketball, very similar to the Harlem Globetrotters. That was some of the first original sports marketing. As we promote women's basketball, we are also promoting the history of women, because you can't take from 1892 to the present day and not talk about the massive changes that women have had in our society, in our political process, come through. If you're not a basketball fan, you're going to find something in here about women's history that you are going to really enjoy.
A couple years ago, I had the honor of being at the induction ceremony for the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, and I grew up playing basketball, and I remember people like Nancy Lieberman, and then of course you had Ann Donovan from Old Dominion University. For me, anyway, I remember this golden age of women's basketball, and it was just such a thrill for me to meet them in person. How much of a thrill is it for you to be at the induction ceremony when you meet these legends?
You know, my first induction ceremony was before I came to work at the Hall of Fame many years ago. And I think the thing that really moved me about that experience is the inductees were so approachable. But I think the thing about the inductees is, yes, they are superstars in the basketball world, but they're people. And I've noticed with the women's sport, they are very approachable and they want to welcome you into the basketball family. And I think that's one of the things about the induction weekend that is so special. By the time they leave here, we're a family. And we use that term a lot, but I really believe that, in having attended other Hall of Fame ceremonies, there's just something special about our weekend. If anyone has never been to our induction ceremony, I obviously invite them to attend. It will move you in some way, because every person that is an inductee has a story, and they are all very inspirational, and it all comes back to that sport piece.
You guys have more than just basketball here, and it's more than the Hall of Fame. There's also meeting spaces, and what all could people do if they come to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame?
The Hall of Fame, obviously, we are here to tell the history, but we have a space downstairs that's called the Urban Playground. They can play basketball, and they can have birthday parties and youth programs down there, team banquets and so forth. Then we also have the South Rotunda, which is the beautiful area when you first come into the Hall of Fame that houses the Eastman statue. That area can be used for any kind of corporate event, wedding receptions, and then the Urban Playground we also use for corporate retreats. It's a fun place where they can have a meeting and then have a break in the meeting and go shoot some hoops. So we do offer a lot of different opportunities for events here.
How does someone contact you?
You can contact us by phone, or you can visit our website, which is WBHOF.com. We would love you to come in, take in the Hall of Fame, and enjoy what is in your backyard. And during the month of March, for Women's History Month, for Knox County residents, bring in your ID and we will offer you a $4 admission to celebrate Women's History Month.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and also thank you for all the work that you're doing here at the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, we appreciate you, and you guys are welcome anytime.